like to get at some of the lessons that I learned from this, which might, I don't know, inspire some discussion later, which is that, as I said at the beginning, I was super nervous about all of this. I kind of came into the experience of, or sorry, I came into the service of homeless people with a mindset of caution, with a mindset of uncertainty. And in some ways it's not unfounded in that, like, you do hear stories of people who had dangerous encounters, and you want to sort of respect the concern of those who care about you. But what I learned through this service was there are certain ways in which you can be safer and learn about what it really means to serve somebody in a way that is predictable and respectable, and that absolutely not everyone out there is out there to hurt you. So I guess I'll just start by saying that if you ever do join a group of homeless outreach like the one that I did, a soup run, say, it's okay to be nervous. In fact, in my first few times, I just followed the people who had been doing it for weeks, and I just kind of stood behind them while they did all the stuff, and I observed. And that was okay. Part of it was just being present and challenging myself to kind of see what it was like, and then reframe my picture of what the service was and come into it the second time. Another important thing was learning that this outreach wasn't meant to like fix a problem right then and there. I mean, maybe you could if it was a small thing, but most likely these conversations were just meant to both offer us a humbling opportunity to get to know our neighbors and to see them as more than just a number. But it was also there to say, oh, like perhaps you haven't had an opportunity to speak with somebody like a friend in a while, and we want to offer that to you. We don't have much, we have some comfort food for the moment, but that's kind of our entryway into asking someone to share themselves with us and to support them if we can, and then at the end, ask to pray for them. And that was another thing that I learned, was that through meeting these people and revealing who they were behind the number, as I mentioned, we were much more capable of praying for them and thinking of them intentionally. Because whereas you could pray kind of in abstract for homeless at any time, once you get to know somebody and know what someone's problems are, you can love them more truthfully in a sense. So that being said, one other thing I'll mention before I go on to my next slide is that though encountering the homeless can be daunting in a way, because you don't know what to expect, I will say that that unexpectedness also has a benefit in that you will never really find someone that is exactly what you imagine, like fits a stereotype, because although there are trends that do persist across the group, such as maybe coming from an unsafe home or kind of failing through lots of jobs, you'll always find that there is like a motivation or an aspect of their story that is not what you expected, and that restores that person's kind of status as like just a real human being rather than a predictable kind of like robot or number. And so I will say that I didn't really understand that myself until I was able to go out and start meeting people. And for example, found one guy who by appearances looked like any other rough sleeper. When I talked to him, I learned he was only on the street for a week at that point. And before then, he had been trying to work a job to support his daughter. In fact, he had been a prize, he mentioned that he was a prize boxer earlier in his life, but I wouldn't have guessed that. Like I might have thought, oh, maybe he's someone who's struggled with drugs and has just fallen out. But in truth, like I said, he'd only been on the street a week. And so you don't really learn about the reality of people's situations, or the fact that sometimes rough sleeping is not caused by irresponsibility so much as it is as being forced into it. For example, we also had cases where women were fleeing abusive homes where none of their family members defended them anymore, at least as far as they told us. And so they instead found it much safer to be surrounded in Dublin, but with like anonymity, than it was to be back in their small hometown where kind of everyone knew them for what they were afraid of.